Hi, everyone. Please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you. In this video, I am reposting a video which I first posted in 2021 in the summer and then did an update to it in the fall of 2021. You'll see that the primary focus is on the role of Neptune in the American chart as well as in its cycles. And remember that this planet has a 165-year orbit. So it takes a long time to go around. So what happens is the points where it returns to where it started, as well as the halfway point, when it's opposed, become really important. By which I mean in the American chart. It starts out in Virgo, makes its way to the halfway point in the 1850s, 1860s, then returns to its original place in the 1930s, 1940s. Now it's again where it was during the American Civil War. And when you watch the video, you'll notice that the theme is repeating. And this is something to keep in mind because if you ask, well, why are we experiencing this problem? Because this is part of the American psyche, the American experiment, and indeed the American problem. It's something that is due to resurface during these long cycles. It should strike you as somewhat obvious, at least, that the theme today is not all that different from what it was during the Civil War of the 1860s. There is a racial divide. The white majority, almost certainly to become a minority as the years pass, is upset, resentful, etc. And so when you see the graphics showing you where the Neptune cycle is and how important this planet is to democracy itself, you could say that democracy is the combination of Neptune and Uranus, which outside of the sun, of course, because it's the biggest in the solar system by far, the next two enormous planets are Jupiter and Saturn. After that, it's Uranus, Neptune. Again, big, big planetary forces. Once you get past those planets, the rest is flotsam. Very, very small amount of matter in relative terms. So Uranus, Neptune, they're discovered in the late 18th century, 1782 or so for Uranus. Neptune is later, it's in the mid, I think it's 1850, in that range is the next discovery. These two are literally the key to democracy. Uranus, through the empowerment of the individual within a group, that's the Uranian spirit of independence, granting, at least in theory, and let's face it, it's as good as it gets probably. Modern democracies, we're always trying to improve them, but it's the contrast to previous long-term eras with monarchies and barbaric forms of rule, mob rule, fascistic rule, etc. Uranus counters that, and Neptune, in a sense, even more so, because Neptune represents the inclusiveness principle. Neptune is on the high end, of course. These planets have a high end and a low end, and the low end of Neptune is what the Orange Menace is constantly showing us. You know, the con game, the gaslighting, the deception. But on the high end, Neptune is the kindest, most inclusive energy, but it can be misused. And certainly when there are oppositions happening, the situation becomes more challenging. But realize that you'll see in the graphics that there's a very similar pattern happening, which takes up most of the decade and brings us into the 2028 region when Neptune reached the point when the Civil War ended. So, folks, we're in it. That's the whole point. But history, as they say, doesn't necessarily repeat, but it rhymes. That's what's happening. It's just a matter of waiting this thing out and getting to the other side. Now, enjoy the video because I think the graphics really tell the tale in a very interesting way. A while back, I posted a video about the Neptune cycle going back from the pre-USA foundation in 1776 all the way to present time, without providing much explanation other than to show the key time points in the Neptunian orbit so that you can see it at the transit opposition to itself, approximately coinciding with the American Civil War of the 1860s, but then, as it returned to its original position, was when the US was compelled to fight in the Second World War. And now, when we can see that the present-day transit of Neptune is in the same degrees as during those turbulent 1850s when the country was deeply divided, and then in 1861 when the shooting started. When the country was formed in 1776, the government and the populace necessarily acted in unison toward achieving the goal of liberation from British tyranny, and the goal was achieved. Similarly, in the late 1930s and into the early 1940s, the US entered the World War II fray after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and aside from heavy retaliation against the Japanese Empire, the fight was also taken to Europe in order to defeat the Nazis. All of this is with Neptune at its original USA birth position, which once again demonstrates a unified cause, the American people working together to achieve a result. In contrast, during the Civil War period, Neptune was opposing itself, and this correlated with internal conflict, which eventually led to fighting among ourselves. Well, folks, at least on Neptune's account, we're back there again, and if you assess what is happening today, the reason for the conflict is not terribly dissimilar from what it was in the middle of the 19th century. Back then, the southern states were adamant about continuing to enslave African Americans, while the northern states, led by Abraham Lincoln's leadership and initiative, were likewise determined to end the odious practice. In other words, we had ourselves what amounted to a huge racial problem. So what's going on in our present day? Seems to me that the root cause for our current turbulence is once again racial conflict. Even though the Trumpers are pretending that their anger, their rebellion, and their persistent non-compliance with common sense is about preserving their freedom and preventing the United States from becoming a communist country, it's pretty obvious to anyone with half a brain that what is really happening is the white majority, especially as represented by the white, uneducated male majority, together with all the white, likewise uneducated females that are tagging along for the ride. These people are upset that their, up to this point, dominant social status is slowly but surely diminishing as a result of the rise in numbers and an influence of people of color, immigrants, and let's not forget women writ large as well, because while there are millions of women that are perplexingly drawn to Trump's racist, misogynist message, there are many millions more that are fiercely against it. So as a gender, they become part of the resistance against the disaffected white majority that is currently so against what they think is happening to them that they are quite willing to end our democratic system and turn it into some kind of plutocracy or oligarchy or even an outright dictatorship. So basically, we're in a period when two sides are in such profound disagreement about what the country should be and where it should go that no compromise seems possible. One side is adamant about keeping our democracy, which necessarily means everyone gets to vote and every vote is equal, and the other side responds that is not going to work for them because the voters they do not respect will ensure they will not be able to remain the dominant social force. So now, if we look at where Neptune is currently transiting and is due to transit for the next 6 to 7 years, we notice it is exactly as it was in the late 1850s and then during the actual Civil War itself. To be honest, given the way the Republican Party has been infected with the orange menaces, mendacious malevolence, it already feels like we're in a civil war. But remember that in the end, no planet better correlates with democracy itself than Neptune, and it is no accident to see it placed at the US zenith and thereby strongly representative of what is now one of the world's longest democracies. So yes, we're in a conflict, and the conflict is eerily similar to the one 160 years ago, but the forces of actual democracy won that battle, not those that sought to play from the deceptive, corrupt side of Neptune. And the same thing is happening today, and I believe we are going to have the same outcome. Once again, we are going to win and they are going to lose. But unfortunately, it will not be without a fight.